Well, we've already been blathering on for 20 minutes or so. Time to start. You got your wine?
Yeah, hold on.
I'm drinking a nice rye whiskey. You're drinking a nice pink Moscato.
Mm-hmm. It's actually really good.
It is. You haven't had a Moscato for a while, so.
No. Oh, good. That's my Aldi one. It was like $9 or whatever.
Yeah, we have another one.
Can't wait.
All right. Ready to begin?
Into the thick of it. Let's go. Wait.
Always. All right, I'm ready. Let's go. Wait.
I don't know what it is. It's every time I say ready, then my brain goes, no. Welcome back to another episode of Is Fits Happy. I'm Emma.
And I'm Luke.
And this week we are reading chapter 5 of Ship of Destiny. No, we're not. I went too far.
We're reading chapter 6. You want to redo it?
Maybe.
Okay.
Welcome back to another episode of Is Fits Happy. I'm Emma.
And I'm Luke.
And this week we're reading chapter 6, An Independent Woman.
There's just one of them in this chapter, actually.
Well,
Bingtown doesn't have multiple.
There can only be one.
And it is not who we start with. Serilla.
Although she does want to be.
She wants to be.
And Serilla is in a dreary mood, which is mirrored by the world around her.
Mm-hmm.
We come into her sitting in Davad's den, and she has closed all the windows up because of the rainy day and also her paranoia, I think, about being assassinated. And instead of feeling cozy with the fire going, she is kind of feeling stifled. She also notes that winter is starting to creep up on Bingtown, and it's sort of an unpleasant thought because winter is unpleasant at best, and she's now in the middle of nowhere without the fine amenities of Jamalia.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yesterday, with a heavy guard attending her, she had driven from Restart's estate down into Bingtown. She had ordered the men to take the carriage through the town, along the old market and past the wharves. Everywhere she had seen destruction and disrepair. She had looked in vain for signs of repair and rebirth in the shattered city. Burned homes and shops gave off their clinging odor of despair. Piers ended in charred tongues of wood. 2 masts stuck up from the sullen waters of the harbor. All the folk out in the streets had been hooded and cloaked against the day's chill, all hurrying somewhere. They looked away from her carriage as it passed. Even those streets of the city where the remnants of the city guard patrolled seemed edgy and repressed. She kind of is lamenting the fact that the Bingtown that she saw for, only a few days is now gone. There's no activity, no life. And she says she had planned to find the merchants and neighbors who were making an effort to restore the city. She had imagined she would dismount from her carriage to greet them and praise their efforts. They were supposed to have invited her into the struggling shops and walked her through their efforts at rebuilding. She would have congratulated them on their stout hearts, and they would have been honored by her visit. Her plan had been to win their loyalty and love. Instead, she had seen only harried refugees, sullen-faced and withdrawn. No one had even offered her a greeting.
I think this goes back to the big problem with Serilla, and that's that she has an idea of what being a leader is and an idea of what it looks like to lead, and then she's met with reality and cannot cope with that.
Yeah. She wants everyone to greet her with open arms and expects everything to just happen around her without her doing anything because she takes her example from Costco.
Right. Yeah. She
doesn't realize that she's preventing the rebuild.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's something that is really frustrating about this chapter from Serilla's point of view, is that she she's really whiny and really upset about the way things are going, but she wants it to magically be the way she thinks it should be, and she's not really
Mhm.
taking any steps to create what she wants. And
Right.
because she is so broken from what happened to her, she cannot take any criticism. And later, when she has talks with Ronica, she'll ignore any good advice given to her because, as Ronica puts it, she sees every woman as either a spy or a threat.
Yeah.
And it's really hindering her ability to achieve her goals because she cannot figure out how to make it work and will not take advice from people older than her that know what it takes to be a good leader.
Mhm. She felt cheated. Bingtown was the glowing bauble she had always promised herself that she would someday possess. She had come so far and endured so much simply to behold it so briefly. As if fate could not allow her any joy, the moment it seemed she might attain her goal, the city had destroyed itself. A part of her wanted simply to admit defeat, board a ship, and return to Jamalia.
I think that part made me the most mad in reading because Bingtown didn't just destroy itself. She has a direct hand in Bingtown's destruction.
Yeah.
It's her fault Bingtown is like this because
Not only.
well, no, not I mean, she's not the full reason,
She
but
did, prevent a full destruction because the satrap wasn't kidnapped or killed by the Chalcidians and it wasn't
True.
blamed. She helped that a bit.
a little, but only coincidentally, I think.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she ultimately did not step up to help people until it best suited her, and
Mhm.
only with the goal of getting rid of the satrap so she could take over more power.
Right.
So it's really frustrating for her to sit there and complain about how bad things have gotten, which also feels so out of touch considering those are real people's lives and
Yeah.
this is a real place, not just a shiny bauble for her to obtain. And I think it actually goes to show that she and the current satrap are a lot more similar than maybe first realized because they're kind of both spoiled brats who have always been pampered and told, you're so smart, you're so like cunning and brave,
Yeah.
and you can do no wrong, and this is what happens. And obviously, Serilla has had a bit of a different journey than Cosgo has, but ultimately, I feel as though you really see how naive and spoiled she is.
Neither of them are leaders at this
No.
point. So she goes through a little bit of a recap here about how Jamalian nobles aren't to be trusted. There's no ship sailing to Jamalia right now, and how the satrap was led away like a child with candy and
Right.
toys.
She also mentions, for the first time this chapter, but not the last, that she might be seen as a witness and a threat, and someone would find a way to eliminate her because of that.
Yeah.
And it's this repeating theme that we have where she has convinced herself that she is in terrible danger,
Mm-hmm.
and that just because she's here doesn't mean that that danger is away.
A sudden realization shocked her. She did not much care what became of the satrap or his authority in Jamalia. All she wished to do was preserve his power in Bingtown so she could claim it for her own. That meant uncovering who in Bingtown had been so willing to aid in his overthrow. The same people would try to depose her as well. For a fleeting moment, she wished she had studied more about Chalcid. There had been letters in the cabin of the Chalcidian captain, written in Jamalian lettering, but in the Chalcidian language. So she had recognized some nobles there. We had talked about this in the last book as well.
Right.
But she just didn't understand enough to delve into that. And
Right.
then her mind veers away because it recalls her time on that ship.
Right. And I do want to point out that she says specifically that next to some of the nobles, there were sums of money she could tell.
Right.
But it's impossible to know if those sums of money were being paid to them or by them. And so it's really hard to tell, even if it was treason. It could
have
just be
been trade goods.
Exactly. So it's really hard to know that she was close to some sort of answer, but ultimately didn't have it.
And as her mind veers away from her time on the Chalcidian ship, she says that it had forever altered her image of herself. It had made her recognize the full extent of the power men had over her, Well, she had power now, and as long as she guarded that power well, she would be safe. No man could ever impose his will on her again. She had the strength of her exalted position. Position would protect her. She must maintain it at any cost.
And I think this is something that gets to the heart of why she's so unsuccessful, because she is more focused on power than anything else. It's anything she does, even if it's sort of like with Kenneth, where anything that's good that could come out of this isn't the main focus. It's more about how to get more power. Except at least with Kenneth, when he's grabbing after that power, he is still thinking about how things would affect people. He is still trying to run the Pirate Isles as his
Yeah.
kingdom.
And he's had dreams of that for a while. So
Yeah.
he has goals and he tries to meet those goals with actual actions.
Yes.
Serilla just wants the position and the title.
Yes. And I think that's a really interesting distinction between the two, where, I mean, I don't want to say that Serilla is as bad as Kenneth.
Well, no, I don't think we're saying that at all.
But I do think that there is a similarity in the two of them both having had something really horrible happen to them. And then from that, deciding that the way to overcome that is to gain more power, and how they have both gone about doing that. Because Serilla really is, she has this idea and this image of what power looks like, what successful power looks like, but isn't thinking about how to get there or the steps needed to get the reaction she wants. She just does stuff and is shocked it doesn't immediately come out like her dreams.
All she really does in this chapter and what we heard from her is kind of sit in her study, think about things and say, oh, I'm so busy, and then say speeches.
Yeah.
And talk in circles, really.
Right.
And try to consolidate her power. And she has seen Satrap Cosgo as an example, is pretty much doing exactly what he did, except without the drugs. So yeah,
Right.
she's a little bit more cogent and coherent. But she's still inherited his paranoia as well because she's scared of assassins.
Yeah. And I think another thing is she keeps touting that Bingtown is something that she knows and she's a scholar of Bingtown, but yet she doesn't seem to grasp their customs at all. Because I think, especially with this first example of going out in a carriage in the middle of a civil war where things are not looking good, she's surprised that people aren't welcoming her with open arms. And it's the middle of, like, things are very unrestful at the moment.
Yeah.
And so the fact that she thinks she can go around like a noble person and it'll be well received just feels against Bingtown. Bingtown is very do-it-yourself oriented, and she's not really doing anything, like you said.
But here, again, like I said, she's scared of assassins, and this is piggybacking off of what you mentioned earlier. She was not safe from assassination attempts even here in Bingtown. She knew that. She never went out unaccompanied. She never dined alone, and she always made sure that her guests were served before her and from the same dishes of which she would partake. If they did manage to kill her, at least she would not die alone. But she would not let them kill her, nor wrest from her the influence she had fought so hard to secure. It seems like she's getting worse.
Yeah. Well, it's not really a healthy mindset.
No.
And if you view every single person as against you, it's not going to get better. I don't know. I do feel bad for Serilla because you can see where her fears are coming from, and
right,
you can tell
definitely
what's making it worse, but also she's not really helping herself. She's giving into those delusions or fears, and maybe there is a real threat of assassination here. We don't know, but it kind of seems doubtful. I don't think she's the most important thing to get rid of at this very moment, even if she would be down the road.
Right.
So I don't know, just odd to me.
There's a discreet rap at the door. She says enter, and the serving woman, who had a tattooed face, enters and says, Trader Vestrit wishes to speak with you, companion Serilla. Let her enter. Her spirits dropped yet another notch. She knew she was wise to keep the woman close, where she could watch her. Even Road Karen had agreed to that. Serilla had been so pleased with herself when she first thought of the ruse. In a secret meeting, the heads of the Traders' Council had been horrified at her demand to have Ronica Vestrit seized. Even in times such as these, they refused to see the wisdom of such an act, and the thought of that confrontation made Serilla grit her teeth. It had proved to her the limitations of her power over them. But she, in turn, had demonstrated to the council heads her own resourcefulness. A graciously worded request had summoned the trader woman to be Serilla's guest in Restart Hall. Ostensibly, Ronica was to aid Serilla by exploring all of Restart's records, not only to prove Davad's innocence, but her own. And after some hesitation, Ronica did join her there. So that's where we're caught up. Ronica has been in Davad Restart's house with Serilla, and Ronica, in Ronica fashion, has actually been doing that job.
Right.
Combing through the records, wanting to talk to Serilla, helping out, nagging her about things. And Serilla's just like, she's definitely one of the people against me. I just need to find out who she's in league with, and I'll just keep her close. And for now, she's just super annoying because she's nagging me about all these problems I could fix.
Right. Yeah, it's not a great way to live, and probably a little bit of what's kind of pushing her on edge of feeling like everybody's out to get her. There's definitely an assassination attempt. I think also the fact that she doesn't feel she has absolute control over the council is hurting her in this. She really is feeling like she's losing power, which is kind of crazy because I don't think she has at any point had complete control. And
Right.
she, for some reason, thinks that she does or has had complete control, and it's slipping out of her grasp.
I get how she thinks that because she, with her document, is the power of the satrapy in Bingtown now. And Bingtown is technically still underneath Jamalia and in the satrapy. So technically, she should have the same my word is law power as the satrap.
Right.
Bingtown just always has run like Bingtown, you know? And there was already opinions about how the satrap was getting too involved and didn't care. So
Right. No, and it does make me think of like how America was when it was the colonies of America was before they separated from England. Just the idea that like somebody would come in and say, okay, here's what the king wants. And everybody's like, well, king's not here. So, so that's what I think of whenever I read these chapters. But I also found it really interesting from Serilla's point of view that she wants to keep the Jamalian customs. So especially with this servant,
that's what she's used to.
Yeah, I guess. But it's so odd because she went on and on forever about wanting to come to Bingtown, about wanting to be part of Bingtown because they're different from Jamalia. But then as soon as she's there, all she wants is everybody to bend to her will, and for it to become more like Jamalia, which is against why she liked it in the first place.
Yeah, I don't know.
And then also I found it kind of weird or odd maybe that whenever the serving woman comes in who has a tattoo,
Rach.
It's not Rach, the one that's her servant.
I'm pretty sure it is Rach.
No.
Because she talks about the serving woman had a tattooed face, and then she talks about later how Ronica came and her servant who was a tattooed face former slave.
Former slave.
Yeah, but she still has a tattooed face.
Yeah, but she'd only kept this one because it was the only of Davad's servants that knew Jamalian customs.
Oh,
so this
is that
not,
what it says? Yeah. Okay.
This is not Rach. But I found it odd that she is so opposed to tattoo-faced servants.
She's repulsed by, it says specifically, she refused to look at her any more than she must. Serilla was repulsed by the tattoo that spidered greenly across her cheek.
Yeah,
because I'm sure she's used to servants who were not tattooed because they didn't need slaves in the palace.
I guess, yeah.
They probably had willing workers.
Maybe. I guess also in Jamalia, don't they put like lighter colored tattoos so that it doesn't mar the face of the servant?
Yeah.
So maybe that, I don't know. I just thought it was kind of weird that, because I don't think...
Nobody likes to be reminded that this person was once owned. Right?
I don't think that her distaste comes from the fact that this person used to be owned. Because I feel like she doesn't really have a problem with slaves. She just doesn't like the way it looks.
Maybe. We haven't really gotten a lot of Cerilla's opinions on slavery, I don't think. It's mostly focused on Bingtown and the satrap.
That's true.
Has she ever really commented on anything besides this chapter?
I guess I don't think so,
I don't remember.
but because she hasn't commented on it.
That's what makes you think
Yeah.
it's more looks?
Yeah. And so, I mean,
Yeah.
I guess maybe this is supposed to be like a subtle, see, she's anti-slavery.
Right.
I don't know.
The way that Serilla talks in this chapter, either way, is frankly gross because she talks about, I mean, in addition to everything that we've already mentioned, she
Right.
talks about how when Ronica first arrived, she was so sure of her triumph over this woman
Right.
because she arrived with no bags, and her serving woman, Rach, who we know as Rach, who had a tattooed face, treated each other almost like equals. So Cerilla's thinking, oh, this woman is so down in the dirt. I win.
Yeah.
It's just so, ugh.
Yeah. And
It's so
especially
gross.
her mention that she didn't even have a single piece of jewelry to wear at that
Yeah.
first dinner.
As plain Ronica had sat eating at the foot of Cerilla's table that evening, the companion had felt triumphant. This pitiful creature was no threat. She would become a symbol of the companion's charity, and eventually some slip of hers would betray her fellow conspirators. Whenever she left the house, Rowan followed her. So, Serilla obviously puts so much stock in the display of wealth
Right.
and how your servants treat you.
Yeah.
It just seems so gross and weird from the first time we see her because she's all about like, oh, everything has to be, you have to listen to me equally. I'm also a scholar. I don't
Right.
know.
And yeah, she really didn't. Who she was at the beginning of the series was not obsessed with visual looks of power, it feels.
She didn't care about wearing jewelry.
No, she never asked for jewels or adornments from even the previous satrap. And with Costco, obviously she wouldn't. But it wasn't until after her event with on the ship with the Chaldeans that she realized that she
I need
would
to look powerful too.
Yeah, it like something changed in her where now it's more about visual representation, which you think being in Veronica's presence would help to assuage her of that because she would learn, hey, it's not about what you have, it's about how you hold yourself and the actions
Yeah.
you're doing. But that apparently doesn't get through. She's still all about grasping power through looks.
Mm-hmm. She mentions that Ronica moved into Davad's old room, and this is where she also talks about how Ronica is now a distraction to her, asking her all sorts of questions. What was she doing about clearing the sunken ships from the harbor? Was there any word of aid from Jamalia? Had she sent a bird to Chalced to protest these acts of war? Had she tried to gain the support of the three ship's folks to patrol the streets at night? Perhaps if the former slaves were offered paying work, they would prefer it to roaming as leading gangs. Why had Serilla not urged the Bingtown Council to convene and take charge of the city again? Every day, Ronica pushed at her with these questions like these. In addition, at every opportunity, she reminded Serilla that she was an outsider. When Serilla ignored her other demands, Ronica went back with monotonous tenacity to insisting that Davad was not a traitor and that Serilla had no right to his property. The woman did not seem to respect her at all, let alone afford her the courtesy due a satrap's companion. It rankled even more because Serilla was not sure enough of her position to bring her authority to bear on the traitor. Too often she had given in to the woman's nagging. First, to have Davad buried, and again to surrender some orchard to the traitor's niece. She would not give in to her again. It only encouraged her.
So this is something that I find her biggest flaw, like Cerilla's biggest flaw, is that she cannot take advice or criticism.
Yeah.
And especially here, it's not even necessarily criticism that Ronica's bringing up. It's more, hey, you are calling yourself the leader. What are you doing about all these problems?
Mhm.
What's happening with this? What's happening with that? Have you made any decisions? Why aren't you doing more? Why are you just sitting here doing nothing?
And if you're not doing that, let's get the council together so they can fix these issues.
Right. And I think that's a very Bingtown way to go about it from Ronica's end.
Yeah.
With like everybody's kind of equal.
Pragmatic. Let's just
let's
get
fix
the
the
solutions
problem.
done.
Yeah, everybody's voice needs to be heard. And I think it also shows a difference between caring about a place versus caring about power.
Yeah.
And we see Ronica really does care about Bingtown. And the reason I think that Serilla feels like this is just to drive home that she's an outsider is because that's how Serilla feels. I don't think that's what Ronica is trying to do. I don't think she's trying to be like, see, you don't know anything about our town.
Right.
This feels more like when she was trying to teach Malta.
Mm-hmm. But she's just not a very patient teacher.
Yeah, it's not. I would say like, yeah, patient is a good word for that. I was gonna say like matronly teacher. She's not very kind. She's more fed up and like, okay, if you're gonna say that you're in charge, you think you're a grown up. Where's the thought behind the grown up? Where are all the grown up things you need to do?
Mm-hmm.
And it really does make me think of how she treated Malta at first, and just the tough love aspect. And I think that does make Serilla feel bad because she isn't thinking of those things and she doesn't care about that.
Yeah.
And who is this woman to come in and question her power and authority? And by her doing that, it takes away something from Serilla in her mind. And it's really sad that that's how she's taking it instead of learning from somebody who knows more than her.
Throughout this chapter, we also see a lot of Serilla's reliance on Road Cairn and the growing reliance upon him.
Mm-hmm.
She mentions him here that he has been following Ronica and Rach, and they have been going door to door to rally the traders to convene the council. Road had reported that she was often turned away or treated brusquely by those she called upon, but the woman was insistent. Tonight she would gain her largest triumph. The council would convene. So now Serilla is scared about that. If they listened to Ronica and listened to her about Davad, then more of Serilla's power was going down the drain. If the council decided his niece should inherit the estate, Serilla would have to move out of Restart Hall and be forced to ask hospitality of another trader. She would lose her privacy and her independence. She could not allow that to happen. Serilla had gently but firmly opposed the council's convening, telling them all it was too early and that it was not safe for the traders to gather in one place where they could be attacked. But they were no longer listening to her. And Serilla just makes mention that all she needs is more time. She needs more time to consolidate her power.
Right.
But that's just time to placate them and let the city get worse. And she just thinks like, oh, if I just wait longer, then they'll all be behind me.
Yeah, I think that's also something that was frustrating to read is that she doesn't want to lose her privacy and independence. She doesn't want to lose the power. She acknowledges that there's a potential she was wrong about Davad. And if she was, that takes away a lot of her credibility.
Yeah.
Because all of this was started on her definitely knowing that Davad was part of the plan. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, I think seeing her try to tell people, no, don't gather, and then being frustrated when they stop listening to her. What has she been doing in the meantime? Because she does say, I just need more time. And like you said, time to do what? Yeah, because she's not doing anything. And she can't be Pikachu surprise faced when everybody's like, okay, well, we've been doing it your way and you're not doing anything. So I guess now we have to do it our way.
Right.
If she would have done anything, they would have listened to her more, I think.
She says a bit more, if she only had another day, another week, a bit more time, and she was sure she could master the council. Then, with her superior education and experience of politics and knowledge of diplomacy, she could guide them to peace. She could make them see what compromises they must accept. She could unite all the folk of Bingtown and from that base treat with the Chalcedeans. That would establish for all her authority in Bingtown. Time was all she needed, and Ronica was stealing it from her. But yeah, she has this lofty goal in mind, and I highlighted something and made a comment here that this is what Paragon was warning Althea about. Be the leader that you need. Unite people now. Don't say like, oh, in the future, this is what we have to do, you know?
Yeah.
I just need more time in the future. No, do it now. Like,
right.
Don't let your don't let your small little roadblocks get in your way and bring down the whole goal. Serilla just isn't doing anything. She's letting herself be paralyzed and just procrastinating and saying, if I change the status quo, I might lose everything.
Right. And she keeps saying, if I just had more time, right?
Yeah.
She makes a comment that she needs that time to know who does better with bribery of more lands and who would do better with sweet words and who needs a more stern hand. And it's like, well, how do you not already have some idea of what that is? Why aren't you meeting with those people then, talking to them about their ideas to learn more about them? And she's just not doing anything. And her putting all the blame on Ronica also kind of rankles me because it's like, what do you mean Ronica's taking up your time? What are you doing when Ronica's not in your study?
Yeah,
like
nothing.
She's not there 24/7, and you thinking about her 24/7 isn't Ronica's fault. You brought her there. If that ruined your time, you shouldn't have brought her there.
She literally went out for a ride yesterday, didn't get the result she wanted, and then went home and locked herself in her study.
Right. And didn't eat dinner because she had no appetite for it after the whole ordeal.
I don't know. Anyways, Ronica enters in, and Ronica's all Ronica attitude, like, wouldn't it be easier if I just announced myself? And Serilla's all like, oh, it's not proper though. And she's all snappy.
You're in Bingtown now, Ronica replied evenly. Here, we do not believe in wasting time simply for the purpose of impressing others. She spoke as if she were instructing a recalcitrant daughter in manners. Without asking leave, she went to the study table and opened the ledger she had brought. I believe I've found something here that may interest you.
That I doubt. Ronica had been far too assiduous in tracking down evidence. Her constant ploys to mislead Serilla were vexatious, and making her own deceptions wear thin. Do you weary so quickly of playing satrap? Ronica asked her coldly. Or is this, perhaps, the way you believe a ruler is to behave? How dare you? She began, and then her eyes widened even more. Where did you get that shawl? She demanded. Serilla knew she had seen it in Davad's bedroom, flung over the arm of a chair. How presumptuous of the woman to help herself to it.
That is such a funny line coming from the person who presumptuously took over Davad's whole house and holdings and money.
Then Ronica, is surprised, but then her eyes soften and she's kind of reminiscing because she's like, oh, I sewed this myself and made it for my friend.
Yeah.
From one wife to a new wife.
One new wife to another new wife. Because she was pregnant, I made this for her.
I don't need your permission to borrow her things. You are the one who is a looter and an intruder here, not I.
I also like that Ronica does not ever stand down. Occasionally it's annoying, obviously, as we've seen before, but here it just really makes me respect her so much because she has everything to lose and she doesn't care. She's like, well, already lost it.
In her mind, she's like, I don't have anything else to lose.
And I love that she comes in and tells her matter-of-factly, hey, that's not how we do things here in Bingtown, first of all. And then secondly, being like, oh, sorry, is that how you think a satrap should be? Or are you tired of pretending? And that is so funny to me because that really gets to the heart of Serilla, right?
She is pretending.
She is pretending. And I think...
And that is how she thinks they should be.
Yes. And I think that's something so interesting that I don't think... I can see how this comes off as antagonistic and why they don't get along. Mm-hmm. But I don't see how Serilla doesn't see this as a great well of knowledge that she should be trying to win to her side.
She's provincial. And she's trying to distract her with misleading evidence.
And that's the other thing. Serilla is so sure that Ronica is a traitor and a spy, and she definitely is in on this whole thing, instead of admitting that maybe she was wrong about Davad. Yeah. A person she did not know for more than, a week, maybe 2?
Yeah.
It's just really frustrating.
It's convenient.
True. And if she's wrong, then that hurts her power. So it's better to just not think about that, I guess.
A petty vengeance occurred to her, Serilla. She wouldn't look at this woman's feeble evidence. So she just turns away and she's felt suddenly chilled and oh, this fire's going out. So she starts banging at the logs with a fire poker.
Right. Which I don't know if anybody has ever messed with a fire in a fireplace, but they are real fickle. And if you don't poke them the right way, they will go out.
They're not even that fickle, really. Serilla
Yeah.
says that she's trying to stir the coals and logs back to life. And Ronica's like, aren't you going to look at this? And Serilla responds, what makes you think I have time for this? Do you think I have nothing better to do? Blah, 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 blah. Your city is dying and your people do not have the backbone to fight its death. And she kind of, people are still looting. Gangs and slaves are around and stealing from people, and I've commanded that they be captured, but no one's doing anything. She whacked a log with the poker, sending a stream of sparks flying up the chimney. And Ronica finally gets fed up and like, give me that thing. And she like pushes all the logs to the center on top of the coals and they catch on fire again.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise. It's just funny to see in little details too how out of her depth Serilla is in some place that doesn't have servants doing everything for you.
Right. No. And also her complaints about everything going wrong. Like, you're in charge, girl. Fix it then. That's, I think, what also makes me mad is she complains and whines about things not going her way.
Right.
You wanted to be in charge. You wanted to do this. Like, that's on you now.
You studied Bingtown for your whole life. Probably since you were 15 or something like that, You're, maybe close to 30? So 15 years of studying Bingtown, and you don't know that their council does everything, and you think that stopping them from doing something will help get things done in the city?
Right?
What's going on here, Serilla? Of course no one's doing anything because
the council hasn't told them to.
De facto leadership, the ones who do everything in the city, have said nothing. So no one's there listening to you because you're an outsider.
Exactly. And also her way of handling things, just like, oh, there's looting happening, so I've ordered people to capture them and make them into an army we can use against the Chaldeans. Like, what makes you think people that are caught and are going to be loyal enough to be in an army?
Yeah.
Like, and what makes you think you have the manpower to keep them loyal or punish them? You know what I mean? Like, it feels like there's no thought. It just sounded cool, so she said it, and now when it's not panning out, she's mad at everybody else again.
Ronica has a really great response to Serilla's ranting here, and it kind of gets to the heart of what we've been talking about and the state of Bingtown politics at the moment. You are looking at Bingtown from the wrong vantage. Our harbor is what we must hold first. As for the looting and disorder, I blame you as much as my fellow traders. They sit about like a great flock of boobies, half of them waiting for you to tell them what to do, and the other half waiting for someone else to do it. You have brought division amongst us, but for you proclaiming that you speak with the satrap's authority, the Bingtown Council would have taken charge as we always have before. Now some of the traders say they must listen to you, and some say they must take care of themselves first, and others, wisely I think, say we should simply convene all the like-minded folk in the town and get to work on things. What does it matter now if we are old traders or new traders or three ships people or just plain immigrants? Our city is a shambles, our trade is ruined, and the Chaldeans pluck all who venture out of the Trader Bay while we squabble amongst ourselves. Tonight, perhaps, we shall finally act on some of that. A terrible suspicion was forming in Serilla's mind. The woman intended to steal her plans and present them as her own. Do you spy upon me? She demanded. How is it that you know so much of what is being said about the city? Ronica gave a snort of contempt. I have eyes and ears of my own, and this city is my city, and I know it better than you ever could.
So maybe I take back what I said about Ronica purposely making her feel like an outsider. I don't know if
she definitely is kind of poking at that a lot.
Yeah, but I don't know if she set out with that intention. I think it's just something that she realized works and now leans on more.
Yeah, and we switch over to Ronica's point of view, and we see that in her mind. She thinks, suddenly, Ronica knew that the right choice of words and threats could reduce this woman to a sniveling child. Whoever had broken her completely. She was a hollow shell of authority concealing an abyss of fear. Sometimes the trader felt sorry for her. It was almost too easy to bully her. Yet when such thoughts came to her, she hardened her heart. Serilla's fear made her dangerous. She saw everyone as a threat. The companion would rather strike first and be mistaken than suffer the possibility someone might act against her. So that's kind of where Ronica's coming at this from. And yeah, like you said, maybe she didn't think that at first, but over the weeks that she's been with Serilla, has realized that Serilla is dangerous to Bingtown's way of life and progress and
Right.
healing.
Right. And I think it's also really frustrating to read the point of view that Serilla can't fathom a world where anybody else would have the same insight and knowledge as her. There's no way Ronica's smart enough to have thought the same things that she's been going for.
Because she has, superior knowledge and education.
Right.
But I also, in addition to that, I also think she can't afford anybody else to have that kind of knowledge, because that means that her power isn't absolute or
right. That she's not really needed.
Exactly.
And I don't know. It just, again, it's frustrating because this is someone she could be learning from. And Ronica even says she wishes that they didn't have to be adversaries, but that isn't the case.
Yeah. The way that Serilla is right now, they can't be anything but.
Yeah. And it's really unfortunate. And I do wonder if what had happened to her on the ship never happened, would she be more willing to hear out people and less quick to act? Or would this have been a problem anyway? Because it seems as though she had always intended to take absolute power in Bingtown.
Right.
So even if it wouldn't have come to stirring up civil war, I'm wondering if this is something that would have happened either way, where she just isn't willing to admit that these backwater people she's studied her whole life might actually know something. Which, is dumb because they're a super successful trading city.
Right.
And are also educated. Maybe not to the same degree as her, but her education is solely based on their society and they live it. So why wouldn't they know more than her?
Ronica thinks that this woman had claimed an authority over Bingtown that Ronica did not believe anyone, even the satrap, possessed. Worse, her attempts to wield the power she claimed were fragmenting what remained of Bingtown's ability to govern itself. Ronica would use whatever tactics came to hand to try to move Bingtown back towards peace and self-government. Only if there was peace was there any hope of Ronica recovering her family, or indeed finding out if any of them had survived. So she has to be an adversary to Serilla here, and she has to push back against Cerilla's grasping hands.
Right. Because she wants a more free Bingtown. I do want to quick talk about that aspect of Ronica and how she's really a harbinger of peace and change, because I do think it's pretty different than what we've seen in other books.
Yeah. She's definitely... She's always been a very pragmatic character.
Yes.
And always wants to do what's best for her family, but she's always been very traditional, and we've talked about that.
Yeah.
She's always like, Bingtown society.
Yeah.
This is tradition. We have to do it this way.
And the first book where she was kind of burying her head in the sand because she had to worry about her husband that was dying, and so hadn't really been paying attention to how things had been changing. And it was all about her family is what needed to be protected, so that's what she's focusing on, to now being so aghast that some of the other traders are saying, we're taking care of ourselves first. That all isn't about us. Because she's realized, after going through as much as she has, that it is about them, and that hiding away doesn't make it not happen.
There's safety in numbers, and a safe and peaceful society helps everyone stay supported, you know? And she's pushing for that peace now.
But I did want to ask, do you think that this makes sense for Ronica's character? Because I think, like we talked about Althea and Selden, I wanted to bring this up because it is a big change.
I think it does.
Okay.
I think it does because of her promises to herself at the end of last book and the beginning of this book, where she's like, I have nothing left to lose. So I'm staying in Bingtown and trying to do whatever I can. I don't know what that is yet, but I'm going to do whatever I can. And now she's found a goal, and she realizes that maybe I can push and convene the council and do something to make the city safer. Because that's all she can do for her family, because she's still trying to protect her family. It's just that her priorities have shifted and her goals have shifted to the city itself, because That's all that she can do.
Yeah.
So if she can accomplish her goals of clearing Davad and her family's name, and maybe get the Bingtown Council to reassert itself, then it's safe for her family to come back to Bingtown.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to be alone anymore.
True. And I think also it's really important that she has switched over to this mindset of adapt or die,
Right.
where it's like, well, if we don't do something different, we're not going to be around anymore. It doesn't really matter. So I really think that that's good growth from her. And I do think it is a natural character progression, but I thought I would bring it up anyway.
Ronica once again talks to Serilla here, is like, you're not the only one who can talk to people and get rumors. You know, even servants, if treated as human beings, can be a source of information. So it is that I know that a delegation of new traders, headed by Mingsley, has made overtures of truce to you. That is precisely why it is so important that you look at what I have uncovered in Davad's records, so you will proceed with caution where Mingsley is concerned. So, I invite you into my home out of pity for you, and you take the opportunity to spy on me. Ronica sighed. Haven't you heard a word I said? That information did not come from spying on you. Other information had, but there was no point in revealing that now. Nor do I need your pity. I accept my current fortune. I've seen my situation change before, and I will see it change again. I don't need you to change it. Life is not a race to restore a past situation, nor does one have to hurry to meet the future. Seeing how things change is what makes life interesting. I see, Serilla commented disdainfully. Seeing how things change. This is the hardy Bingtown spirit I have heard touted about so much then. A passive patience to see what life will do to you. How inspiring. Then you have no interest in restoring Bingtown to all it was? I have no interest in impossible tasks, Ronica retorted. If we focus on trying to go back to what Bingtown was, we are doomed to defeat. We must go forward, create a new Bingtown. It will never be the same as it was. The traders will never wield again as much power as we did, but we can still go on. That is the challenge, companion, to take what has happened to you and learn from it, instead of being trapped by it. Nothing is quite so destructive as pity, especially self-pity. No event in life is so terrible that one cannot rise above it. The look Serilla gave her was so peculiar that Ronica felt a shiver down her spine. For an instant, it was as if a dead woman stared out of her eyes. When she spoke, it was in a flat voice. You are not as worldly as you think you are, trader. If you had ever endured what I have faced, you would know that there are events that are insurmountable. Some experiences change you forever, past any cheery little wish to ignore them. Ronica met her gaze squarely. That is only true if you have determined it is true. This terrible event, whatever it was, is over and done. Cling to it and let it shape you, and you are doomed to live it forever. You are granting it power over you. Set it aside and shape your future as you wish it to be, in spite of what has happened to you. Then you have seized control of it. Good advice, but also Serilla is not in a place to take hold of that advice, and I don't know if she ever would be, even with, years of therapy and things like that, because that advice isn't for everybody.
Right.
People deal with things in different ways, and yes, for Ronica, that is how she deals with things.
Yeah. And I think there is something to be said to try to give somebody power to take back something that's happened to them by saying, like, if you assume defeat, then you will live that because
Right.
you've convinced yourself it's true, and it doesn't have to be true. I think it is inspiring, but maybe ill-timed. And like you said, maybe it would never be the right time. I think it's coming from a good place, and I think, Ronica means well, but this thing that has happened to Serilla didn't happen that long ago.
Yeah.
It's been what, maybe 3 months?
Yeah.
Maybe. And it was a really big event, and it had really real repercussions. And I feel as though when it's that fresh, you're just not in a mindset to hear the cheery try not being depressed. Like, like, oh, what a novel idea.
Right.
And I don't know, I think, yeah, this
It's advice that Serilla needs to take, but she can't hear it from somebody else.
right. And I think especially not somebody she views as her adversary.
Right.
And not in this mindset. I think
Mhm.
this has to be something that she seeks out and hears from somebody she trusts. And
She actually needs to get there on her own because right now there's no one she trusts.
right. Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's a really important thing where I don't necessarily think anything Ronica said was horrible or even necessarily wrong.
It's just not right for Serilla.
No, and it does make me feel sympathetic towards Serilla because Ronica really doesn't know what Serilla went through.
Yeah.
And I know she means well, and I know she's like, man, something really broke her, but she doesn't know the details.
Mhm.
And I kind of get why Serilla explodes at this and is even more angry and is like, you know, that's easier said than done. You cannot imagine how appallingly ignorant you sound with your girlish optimism. I think I've heard enough provincial philosophy for one day. Leave. And I kind of feel like she's in the right there. I feel
Yeah.
like it's
Not your place to lecture me about
what's happened to me. Yeah. And I think too, it would be really hard to face in this moment, you know? I mean, like I said, this is a fresh wound. This isn't something that happened years ago that she's still struggling with and asking Ronica's help over. This is really fresh in her mind, and she deserves grace for that, I think.
My girlish optimism is the Bingtown spirit you have heard touted about so much, Ronica snapped back at her. You fail to recognize that a belief in being able to conquer your own past is what made it possible for us to survive here. It is what you need to find in yourself, companion, if you hope to be one of us or not. Now, are you going to look at these entries? Ronica wished she could approach Serilla as a friend and ally, but the companion seemed to regard any woman as a rival or spy. So she stands straight and cold and just waits for the reaction. She can tell that Serilla wants to know what's in the ledgers desperately, but can't extend that hand out to Ronica and can't just give in. So Ronica tries to risk it by saying like, okay, fine, I guess you're not interested, and closes them up and slowly walks out the door like, oh,
Well,
they're right here.
Specifically saying, I had thought you would wish to see what I had discovered before I took it to the Bingtown Council. But if you will not listen to me, I'm sure they will. Which I think is more of the
Yeah, like
the
a little
plan.
a bait to
Yes.
lure her out. But Cirilla's too stubborn at this point and too worked
Yeah.
up and just doesn't respond. So Ronica's kind of disappointed that she doesn't look because she does want to share this knowledge. She does
Right.
want to get Serilla to see some logical sense.
Right. But unfortunately, Ronica has really stoked the fire, as it were, in Serilla because
Right.
Serilla isn't going to bow down
Mhm.
and she's not going to talk to her after this,
Yeah.
at least in this moment, or about this thing.
Yeah.
And it is a little petty and childish, which Serilla herself mentions, but it's all Serilla can do. And it's a way for her to take power of the situation and feel in control. And
Yeah.
it's unfortunate because it really does leave her with less information.
As Ronica's leaving, she does hear a knock at the front door and decides to try to listen in to the conversation because she sees Road Karen, who asks where is she, where's the companion, and kind of storms off towards the study. So Ronica's going to try to eavesdrop as she has been doing to get as much information as possible.
And specifically because Road says that he has a message from the Rain Wilds.
This is urgent. We switch back over to Serilla, who is very distraught that Road burst into the study. How dare you charge in like that? She let every bit of her anger and frustration at the traitor woman vent. Then, as she met the sparks in Road Karen's eyes, she took an inadvertent step back towards the hearth. I beg pardon, companion. I foolishly assumed that tidings from the Rain Wilds would merit your immediate attention. He dares to bow stiffly then. I shall, of course, await your convenience. He turned back toward the door where the serving woman still gaped and spied. Shut that door, Serilla snapped at her. Her heart thundered in her chest. The satrap's guardians had taken only 5 messenger birds from Davad's coats the night she had dispatched the satrap to the rain-wilds. They would not use them needlessly. This was the first message to come since she had heard the satrap had arrived there. So, this is the second of 5 messages that they can send, so she knows that this is very important. It has to be something about the satrap. And she snapped at Road Karen, and Road Karen, of course, is not scared of her at all. And we see that in here, and just like, don't yell at me.
Yeah, I find this interaction really telling, because last we saw was when she asked Road Karen to stay behind, and now we don't ever know what happened in that meeting or what they discussed. We know from this chapter that she has sent him to spy on Ronica,
which was what she was going to ask him to do.
Right. But we don't really know much else about what they've been talking about and how the relationship has been sort of transforming. And here we get a really interesting thing where we see that it seems as though Road has the upper hand, unbeknownst to Serilla.
Yeah.
Serilla seems unaware that she does not control him and that she's not in charge here.
She has the idea that he's an untamed dog and things like that, and just refers to him such as that, like he's wild, but she just doesn't grasp the whole magnitude of it.
Yeah, which is really odd because she's so uppity about Ronica and how Ronica treats her and how everybody is taking power from her. And then it comes to Road, and while she notes that he is dangerous, she still cedes him so much power and kind of allows to or facilitates this relationship between them where he has control over her. And I'm not trying to blame her in that. I don't think it's her fault that this has happened to her. No. But I just think it's really interesting how she is so suspicious of everyone else. But when it comes to Road, she's so sure that she has the upper hand.
Men in general.
Yeah.
She talks about, I think it's some sort of internalized misogyny about the way that she grew up with men in power and how she thinks about men in power and how, you know, men can never have power over her again. Men have all the power in the relationship and in society. And she's so surprised that here people just grab the power that they can. So she wants all the power that she can and is very wary of other women trying to do that, but still cedes men all the power that she doesn't want them to have because that's how she's used to it.
That's a good point.
She like sees herself as an imposter and as inferior, so she needs to soothe Road Karen's ruffled feathers and gives him a little bow, and she notes that he bows back, but it's probably sarcastic. And you know, she just doesn't think of herself as somebody who can have the upper hand in these situations.
Right.
And she plays it on the surface like she does, and she talks to herself like she has the upper hand, but I think she feels like she needs to surround herself with men who have power because she doesn't have any herself. I don't know. It's a weird kind of juxtaposition of her beliefs and what she wants to happen versus how she's acting.
Right. I guess that made me think about how she was really young when she was found by the other satrap, right?
Yeah. Yeah. She was with her family in the library, I think, or something.
And we know that their relationship was purely a like friendship or whatever.
It was like a scholastic thing.
Yeah, it wasn't weird that we're aware
like
of.
Satrap, Costco.
Yeah. But I wonder if that praise and sort of power given to her by the older satrap at a young age really made her feel, it cemented maybe that like men are in charge and inherently have more power, but maybe made her feel as though, of course, these men won't take advantage of her in some way, or they'll cede knowledge to her because that's how she was treated by the original satrap.
Yeah.
Like maybe there's something with that where she just feels like, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, with what I said, I'm trying to justify her suspicions of every woman that Ronica notes and her allowing Road Karen into her confidence
Right.
and giving him unsavory tasks that he can hold above her head.
Right. And just in general, the stuff that she does with and for Road that is so against her idea of ceding power.
Right, yeah.
But then not acknowledging it. I think that's the craziest part to me, is that I'm reading from her point of view and I can see that she's giving power away. She does mention it sometimes, but not every time. And it's just great. Like, he felt like he could walk in there, and him having a bad attitude made you immediately calm him down and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, baby. Let me make it better."
He reminded her of a savage watchdog, as like to turn on its master as protect her. She wished she did not have such need of him. First of all, she doesn't have such need of him. She made him important.
Right.
And second of all, yeah, it's as like to turn on the master as protect her, because you're not the master.
Exactly. And I think it's worse that Rode seems to know that this dynamic is there.
He does.
And he is taking advantage of that. He's getting power out of this. So of course he's going to go along with this. And she
complains about servants interrupting her all afternoon and like, oh, just household affairs are so annoying. I'm at my wit's end, basically.
And then he says, "Certainly, companion, I understand how annoying that can be, especially when such weighty matters press upon your delicate shoulders."
It was there, a note in his voice, a selection of word. So she knows that he's being sarcastic and he's
looking down on her.
Yeah.
And I think this too is a part of Bingtown society that she doesn't understand, that there is sort of an evolution happening where women are getting less power in Bingtown society. They are being seen as lesser than their male counterparts.
Right.
It's not the old Bingtown where women are as equal as the men. It definitely is better than Jamelia, it seems, but Ronica is a one-off. Like, she does all of the records for her family and takes care of the finances, which is no longer seen as a woman's job.
Right.
Like, so Rode treating her like a delicate little lady and being sarcastic to her, I think it really goes to show that even if she did everything perfectly, this society isn't the one that she thinks it is. And her being a woman will always be a barrier to some of the people in this town, but it's especially a barrier when she's claiming power and can't back that up with any actions.
Which is also why I think she keeps Road close, is because she wants to have power over a dangerous man.
Right.
Who she views as a dangerous, wild man. Because if she can claim power over him and control him, then she has power over her past, maybe. I don't know.
Right. And
as an armchair psychologist.
I do feel as though there's a weird, like, she wants the approval. She wants the approval of men to tell her that she's doing a good job, that she does have power to placate her. And I don't think she recognizes that necessarily about herself.
Well, Road hands over the message, and with a calmness she did not feel, she opens it up. She says that the words were brief and in their brevity a torment. There had been a major earthquake. The satrap and his companion were lost, perhaps killed in the collapse. Drink this. You look as if you need it. It was brandy in a small glass. She had not even noticed Road taking the bottle down or pouring, but she accepted it gratefully. She did not challenge him as he picked up and read the message.
Right. Again, little things, little actions that she's doing that tell Road he's equal, if not in charge.
Yeah.
And she just does it without thinking, which is, I mean, I don't want to belittle her choices and make it seem like, I mean, she's so dumb. It just is frustrating for her to not notice all these little subtleties that are adding up to her losing power when she's so obsessed with power.
Yeah, yeah.
And Road taking control of the situation, giving her a drink, and
she's asking him questions like, will others know about this?
Right.
Like, what do we do? And Road's sitting there comforting her and being like, there are many traders in the city that keep close ties with the Rainwild kin. There are other birds of wing with the same news. Depend that they will know of this. What shall I do? she heard herself ask and hated herself. With that one question, she put herself completely in his power. Nothing, he replied. Nothing just yet. So she knows about it,
Right.
but I don't know.
She's doing it anyway. And it is probably a comfort thing and probably habit. Whenever she wasn't just the companion, it wasn't up to her to make all the decisions.
Just advised.
It wasn't an advisory thing, and it was a conversation that you had with the satrap where you give advice, you ask questions, you have a conversation. But here, asking that question, what do I do, puts the power in Rhodes' hand to tell her what to do.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really look good when she's trying to say, oh, I'm in charge here. But then Rhodes in charge of her.
Ultimately, she does need somebody from Bingtown to give her advice about what is happening, what other people might know. And that's great. Like, will others know of this? Good question. Second question should be, what do you advise me to do? And then make your own decisions.
Yes. Instead of just going along with Rhodes.
Yeah.
Don't do anything yet. Why? Why not? What's the reasoning? What are your thoughts? No, it's just asking him for help and him saying, okay.
Yeah. So the first half of this chapter is just frustration about Serilla, really. Both of us are just kind of fed up.
Clearly.
Yeah. We've been ragging on her a lot, giving her some grace in some of the aspects, but she's just turned into something that Bingtown doesn't need. And I think we both enjoy Bingtown as a city.
Yeah.
And want to see it succeed. We know it will, but
yes.
Serilla's just the major blocker at this point.
She's really hindering this place she claims to love and want to see prosper.
Even worse than the Chalcedeans, to be honest, at this point.
Yeah. Well, at least the Chalcedeans are open with their hate.
Yeah, right.
She's trying to be like, I love this place and I want to help. And
but
then
they're all savages who don't know anything.
It's a provincial little backwater place.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll take a break there and pick it up in the next episode. It's a long chapter this time, as Emma mentioned before. It's over 40 pages, so we got some ways to go. We switch back over to Ronica, and then I think another point of view, and then back to Ronica. So we got some stuff to do here, but
lots to talk about.
For the first half, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. If you have thoughts about Serilla and Ronica's relationship, or anything about how she's running Bingtown, or what she's going through right now, please let us know at isfitshappy@gmail.com. And of course, you can always message us or comment on our posts and any of our social medias. We're at isfitshappy at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, YouTube, all those kinds of things. So please hit us up. Let us know what you're thinking.
Okay, now we get to talk about my favorite part, which is what you guys have brought to us to discuss. And we're going to talk about some emails today. The first one being from Jonas about my tinfoil hat theory on the serpents eating so many fish that their memories make them more animal-like.
Yes, yeah. And Jonas really likes that theory and agrees that they probably absorb memories from everything that they eat, even deer, but that those memories, a deer's memories, are a drop in a big sea or a big bucket of the dragon memories, so it doesn't really affect anything.
Right. Also, deer memories are likely less complex than human memories ever could be. So good call there.
Yeah. But it is interesting, like if the serpents eating the fish is true, what about the dragons eating the deer all the time? Like, does it make them more animal-like?
Yeah, well, see, but that's the thing, right? Is potentially the serpents have been eating only fish for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Maybe only 500, but I guess we don't really know a typical lifespan or what.
We kind of estimated, already. Yeah.
So we don't really know what a normal lifespan looks like, I guess. And presumably dragons mate and create new babies and then are eaten by the younger dragons at some point when they're done living. I don't know. Maybe they age enough to die and then are eaten by
I don't know.
The other dragons, but it seems as though in a normal life cycle, it wouldn't be long enough to.
And they do seem to consume silver as well.
Yeah.
Which might
help balance.
Yeah. I don't know. But Jonas kind of agrees with you in that it's a very interesting theory there, and really thinks that Paragon kind of rejecting Kyle's blood is probably very extenuating and unique circumstances. And otherwise, we've seen evidence before of live ships getting overwhelmed with battles and blood soaking in onto their deck. So,
right. So if they could pick and choose.
Yeah, it's apparently very hard to do so.
Right. So thank you, Jonas, for bringing that up.
Mm-hmm.
We also got an email from Anna.
Yes.
Who
entitled Tagliatelle.
Which
Tagliatelle.
Love that so much. And they let us know that it had never occurred to them to say anything other than hard G for Tintaglia. But their sister, who just finished Live Ships and has a really hard time remembering names, especially in books, calls Tintaglia Tagliatelle and Ketrican Kitty Cat, which love that. Beautiful.
Yeah. I guess, is it Tagliatelle? I don't know. The pasta, whatever it is.
The pasta.
I'm just an American.
But I heavily relate to being really bad with names, especially in fantasy books. I feel like Anna's sister and I would get along well because half the time I just don't even keep track. I'll be like, wait, who is that again? And you get so annoyed with me.
We read names differently because I think we're similar in that sometimes you see a name and you pick a pronunciation, you just go with it, right? And you never try to read it correctly, but you forget people sometimes.
Yeah.
While I remember everybody, and almost never, unless it's an easy name, will I try to sound it out. So I will just be like, this is the pronunciation, but I'll remember everybody.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't know. I'm really bad with names. I'm bad with names in real life, in video games, in TV shows. We will watch a whole season of The Great British Bake Off, and I will be the last episode like, the old man. And you're like, Jurgen? And I'm like, sorry.
Like, then, you already followed his Instagram and spoiled yourself on the season.
But I'm really bad with names. So love that. Love the Tagliatelle.
Yeah.
Also, we got to learn about some G-Force, which I believe we were talking about with the
Rain riding Tintaglia, or being clutched in the claws.
Yes, clutched by Tintaglia.
And rising swiftly or falling swiftly.
Yes, the second time. And I think I made a comment about G-forces and then said we don't really understand. And Anna happens to be a pilot of big planes. So let us know that 1G is 1 gravity, and it's what we experience all the time just existing on Earth. In a 30-degree bank level turn in a plane, it would be like 1.15 G if you were in a little Cessna or something. The pilot
which is like a small,
something the pilot
plane.
could easily pull the yoke up and could give you a 1.5 to 2 G. Blackout wouldn't really occur until at least prolonged 5G force.
Yeah, so I'm guessing like 1.5 to 2 is probably Rain's feeling that, and that's a very unique feeling in a world without any vehicles.
Yeah, any motorized flight vehicles. So that's a really fun little detail.
Yeah.
Thank you for explaining G-Force. And then finally, we got the question, do you think the others have any dragon memories, or do they get all of them from consuming their cocoon?
I think they're just like any other dragon that hatched. They just had too much human influence. So they mostly get them from their cocoon, right? Just like any other dragon. They might have some experiences from being aware inside the cocoon.
Right.
But all the memories are from the memories that were passed down to them.
Yeah, that's true. It seems as though they must use or have some capacity to have the dragon's memories and have some access to that based on how She Who Remembers talks about what happens when they drink her toxins and how
Yeah.
they use the memories of their pasts as justification that they understand the future, which She Who Remembers thinks is a bastardization of what she does and what her toxins give off.
Yeah.
But I think that points to there definitely being the memories there, but maybe it's not as easily accessed as the dragons.
Because they're more human.
Yeah.
They have more of a human influence. Yeah. Because I was going to say, like, with that description and everything, they obviously don't have the same memories as regular dragons because they would recall everything that She Who Remembers uses.
Right.
And recalls.
Without the toxins.
But being too human influenced, maybe it's harder to access those.
Right. Although, you know, whenever I read the description of the toxins being drank, it kind of gave me the impression of all the stories I hear about the people who go on ayahuasca trips to like
right.
better know themselves. Yeah. So like maybe they do have access to those memories. It's just like
the others on Other Island are just a commune in the middle of nowhere. There's some others living in a city somewhere, and they're like, these hippie freaks over on this island are pretending to be prophets.
I guess that's a really good point. We don't ever get to see any others.
Because I don't think there are.
Yeah.
I think the dragons killed them instantly all the time because they were a perversion of nature, right?
That's fair.
And
although
these ones only survived because of the cataclysm and
then they were able to take over.
Down. Yeah.
Take She Who Remembers. Does that mean that they were also young and just hatched? I think this goes back to...
We talked about this already, yeah. We don't know. It could have been the generation beforehand.
Right.
Remember, the cataclysm probably, and the hunting of down and killing of dragons didn't happen overnight or in 1 year. Probably a generation.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you for the information and the question, Anna. It was great to think about. And thank you, Jonas. Thank you to everyone who comments and participates with us. We always love hearing what you guys have to say every week.